Meeting of the River Falls Board of Education. This meeting has been properly notified, and we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I don't believe we have any visitors or delegations who have signed up, and so we are going to move right into informational items and our Wildcat Pride Award. Bo.
All right. I get the distinct pleasure to present the Wildcat Pride Award tonight to River Falls Sports Broadcasting. Would one or all of you like to come up?
I'll come up.
Yes, please do. All for it.
I'll just say this, we have a big squad, but many are working tonight doing
Yeah, you're good right there.
We're at the gym right now.
Get yourselves up here, let's go. So these awards are proudly presented to, there's a bunch of people, I will name you here in just a second, but the school board proudly presents this Wildcat Pride Award to recognize the professional excellence and invaluable service provided to our district. Through dedication of broadcasting, our athletic contests, and special events, you have consistently ensured that the spirit and achievements of our students are shared with clarity, passion, and true enthusiasm throughout the community. Thank you for being an outstanding ambassador of Wildcat Pride. And I'd like to just quickly go through all the names. There's a few of them here, Kevin.
There's a lot. We added one more tonight because they had to fill in at the camera at basketball.
Got to fill in, yeah.
So add Todd Rokamp to the list.
Oh, all right. Well, there you go. I think he's done some before.
has.
So Todd Rokamp, yeah, there you go. Paul Ederman, Ariel Vestris, Debbie Vestris, Kevin Black, Russ Blasius, Corby Bodenberg, Tim Burns, Aaron Cudd, Rob Derry, Braden Engstrom, Jason Hornicky, Eric Jalowitz, Dan Jenkins, Bill Jensen, Jeff Johnson, Mike Cayley, Chris Larson, Tim Lavold, John Longsdorf, Kit Litke, Sophie Oddie, Marty Paulson, Greg Peters, Jenna Peters, Steve Pellinger, Nate Sherman, Scott Simpson, Sean Tim, Kevin Westhouse, Justin Wilson, and Melissa Wilson. So congratulate you guys. I was just going to say, can you kind of just give us a 1 minute?
Sure.
What happened, how it started?
So these are all volunteers. This is all River Falls Sports Broadcasting. I made that into a 501c3 organization. This is all nonprofit, all volunteers. So I kind of manage the volunteers, you might say. So I know Nate has helped out in the past, and Bo, I always call Bo on 6-man on the bench. He's always ready to go just in case. I think Mike Miller's helped out in the past. So many people helped out on the past.
Yes, I have. Nice. Yes, I have.
Yeah, Luke's done some soccer. So anyway, so people have interest on this, so I'm just managing the volunteers. We do a little real quick training about keeping this high level, celebrating all athletes. We're 70% Homer, but we celebrate both teams. We never are critical of coaches or players. It's celebratory. We're glad the kids are participating in athletics because we know what kind of jumpstart in life that will give them. So that's what we're all about, and we found a bunch of people who are as passionate as I am. Mike Keeley was one of the originals. Remember the very first time he did girls volleyball, and Mike says, "What do I do?" And I said, "Just describe what you see." And he says, "Okay." So that's it. So there's a game going on right now, the Prescott game, and there'll be a girls game going on right after this, which Melissa's going to go help out with that. So there you go, Bill.
Kevin, what year did you start?
So when I moved to town in 2013, we started doing this. I saw Russ Blasius and Fred Barr. They were filming to put the game on Channel 16, local cable access.
Right.
I was doing some live broadcasting in Fort Collins, Colorado, where I came from, and I said, "Hey, you guys want to do this live?" And they're like, "No way, we don't want to do this live." So talked them into it. We did it in the spring of 2013. We were streaming on a thing called High School Cube for about 5 or 6 years. They were bought out by NFHS Sports. And then I went to the YouTube, which was the best thing ever because Grandma and Grandpa can find every game real easily. So we've been on YouTube for about 6.5 years. We're coming up on our 2 millionth viewer on YouTube. So
I remember you and I had a conversation, and you said you had just moved to town, and you said, "What do you think?" And I remember as an athlete, we had Channel 12, I think, at that time, or Channel 16, and how fun it was to be able to watch. Kind of, they had it, kind of recording back in the old days. And I just remember thinking it would be cool, but I didn't get it, right? I didn't get it exactly what you had envisioned, and it's turned into unbelievable
Yeah.
what you've done for this school and these kids.
It's just right place, right time, and it can't be done without the volunteers. So, and the support of the district, David's been great, and so we'll just continue to do what we're doing. Again, keep it high level, celebratory, celebrate the kids, the district, your school, and that's what it's all about. If you keep your mind there, this thing's gonna be good. So, thank you to all the great volunteers who have given up countless hours.
Yeah, I will say two things. As somebody in the district who's had parents watching this stuff who can't get to games, it's invaluable. I mean, my dad would never be able to get to some of the games, and he got to watch all his grandkids do stuff. Second thing is, this football season, my son Gavin was down in Whitewater watching with some of his wrestling teammates, and they said they cannot believe that's our high school broadcast. This looks professional. There's replays, there's commercials, and the graphics are unbelievable. It's something that's really high level,
So we
and I hope
try.
people appreciate it.
We're in quiet competition.
Thank you for all you do.
Yeah.
To Godfather.
You want to start covering school board meetings? We could use the audience.
I can see it.
Color commentary.
I know all of the volunteers.
Color, like, yeah.
I know all of the volunteers want to make sure that you feel proud of what we're doing, so that's really where we're at. So,
Well,
One stat, Kevin, you mentioned a couple of them, but
Yeah.
you sent this to me. So since 2018, that you have had 1.9 million views
yeah,
on your
we're
channel.
just coming up on 2 million.
What happened to the first 6 years?
Yeah, right, I don't know about that, because we really didn't keep track of that. So it took us like 5 years to get to 1 million, and in the last year and a half, we got almost another 1 million.
oh, wow.
So starting to pick up about 7,000 subscribers on the channel.
So we really appreciate that, the ability for people to see what's going on in River Falls, not just in and around River Falls, but all over, is pretty amazing. And it's one of the things that makes this community really special, and we thank everybody for that.
Well, thank you so much for the recognition. Thank you to the volunteers, because this doesn't get done without the people stepping up, coming early, staying late for your district. So thank you for the recognition.
Thank you very much. You are all welcome to stay, but you might need to go for a game, so we understand that. Not really. All right, now we are going to move on to a spotlight on education, and we have with us tonight early childhood special education folks. So please come to the table and share with us what you have.
Well, we're not used to this, kind of like we're used to sitting on the floor.
But do that if you want.
People who are watching on TV, can you introduce yourself? For the people who are watching on TV, can you introduce
Yes,
yourselves?
if you could introduce
Oh,
yourselves,
yes.
yes.
So we're part of the EC team. EC is Early Childhood Special Education, so all the children we service have special needs of some sort to become part of our program. So I'm Mara Shepard. I'm one of the early childhood teachers.
And I'm Amber Sherman. I'm the occupational therapist.
And I'm Ann Nelson, the speech language pathologist.
So we also have 2 other early childhood teachers like myself. They both come to support me as well. And then we have let's see who else.
Physical therapist.
Physical
Michaela.
therapist, yes. So, and
There's
then
our team.
This is our team. The one not listed on there is Nicole, who is part-time special ed in the morning. She's the one that's at the university preschool. And she supports children there. And then in the afternoon, she's our district 4K site at Rocky Branch. So, and she's gen ed, and then Emma supports 4K in the afternoon there. So 3 of us are here tonight. So we'll just give you a little bit of an overview of what we do, and because a lot of people don't really know what we do, and even in our own school, they don't always know. So it's good just to get the word out there on what we're doing. So we service children starting at their 3rd birthday. We get referrals from the counties, either Pierce or St. Croix, because we service both. And then we go through the referral process with the county children. Depending on what their needs are, they may have speech, OT, PT, educational services. For them to qualify for programming with us, like within my program, to be in a classroom-based setting, they need to have at least 2 areas of a delay. They could be just serviced by Ann in a speech-only kind of group as well. So with the young ones that are 3, 4, that are not of 4K age yet, at this point, mostly they come into either myself or Emma, our classrooms in the mornings. We have 4 classes. So we have Emma has a class that's Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning. Those are all children that are not quite old enough for 4K yet. However, they need a bit more support to be ready for that 4K setting. And then I have a Monday, Wednesday morning group that is young 3-year-olds that are working on social communication, some academic kind of skills. So they're a little less needy or less involved than some of the other students. Tuesday, Thursday morning classes are our high needs classes. Emma has a class that's all nonverbal autism. And then I have a class that's high needs or health issues and things going on that we need extra support in that classroom. And then I also have another classroom Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday afternoons, and those are all children that are 3.5, young 4s that are, again, kind of like Emma's morning, that are not old enough for 4K yet, so it's another year to practice, but we put more expectations on them so that they are getting ready for what 4K is, where it's a lot different for a lot of them to be in that environment. So at this point, I think we're servicing 24 children. We also do a district screening every fall. We're required to do that as Child Find. And so we do that in early October usually, and then we do tend to get a few referrals from that as well. So our numbers start small and end large, depending. Every year we almost double our numbers. I mean, pretty close. So from where we are at the start.
So we're at 24 now.
24
but that
right
means
now,
we won't end at
but
24.
no, we will not, because we have
Actually, 25 as of today.
maybe 26 out tomorrow, depending. So,
You never know.
Yes, it just keeps going up, and we get them whenever they turn 3, so our classes are constantly shifting. So you get adjusted, and then you throw a whole new one in there, and you're restarting. So all the year, you never know what you're gonna get, and you can have the greatest plans laid out and they may not happen at all. Depends on the day. Everything's an adventure, I would say.
Yes.
All right. So this is kind of what our typical days, both morning and afternoon classes look like. We use lots of visuals, as you see right on the top of there. Visuals are a great way for our students to be able to kind of start gaining some independence. Also, then we're not constantly talking, because bombarding them with too much language, sometimes they can't process what we're saying. So that's a pretty typical schedule there, where we come in and we're working on independence, so they're hanging up their things and getting their folders out, signing in, writing, so they're practicing fine motor. My afternoon is actually starting to trace their names.
Yay.
Amber's working with us with that, so that they're ready for 4K when they have to write their names. But the morning kids, it's more just strengthening those fine motor skills, but we call it writing time. Then we go into a circle, which is our group time. Then play, bathroom, snack, cleaning up, playground or movement kind of time. That's kind of the typical structure of our days. That can change depending on weather or special events, things like that. But we try to keep it very consistent, because it's better for them when they know what to expect and how to predict things. So if there is a change, they're a little more flexible with it. But we are very much a play-based program, because they learn best through play, especially when they're 3 and 4 years old. And through play, we learn. I call it incidental learning through academics, when they're talking about colors, shapes, just as they're playing. So they're more engaged in their learning when we do it through play. So we foster independence. We work on following directions and turn taking and sharing. Those are big things. Learning social skills, how to advocate for yourself. And social emotional regulation is a big thing we work on, just how we recognize our own feelings or how we might impact someone else, and things we can do to be more aware of that within ourselves. And then the therapies, I'll just say, they come right within our program and kind of work on different things, or might pull out once in a while depending on what they're working on, but we'll let them they're the experts on therapy, so I'll let them talk about that.
I'm gonna go to the pictures.
Sure.
Okay.
So, yeah, I work with every child who's in early childhood right now. Once in a while, we have somebody who's identified with needs that don't include communication, but it's rare. So I work with a wide range of abilities. Some of the children are identified just with articulation delays, so they're just practicing producing speech sounds clearly and communicating in that way. Some of them have mild to moderate language delays, so I'm working on vocabulary building, story comprehension, following directions, social communication like Mara was talking about, standing up for themselves, learning those powerful phrases like my turn, you know, or it's mine, please stop, that's a big one. So a lot of the 3-year-olds that come to us might be speaking in one-word utterances or maybe stringing 2 words together, while typically a 3-year-old would be using short, complete sentences. So helping them build those skills. And then we also have children like in the Tuesday, Thursday groups that Mara talked about that are completely nonverbal. So we're working on communication strategies for them that can range from visuals, like the visual schedule, or a picture exchange system. If you look in the bottom left there, that little guy is using pictures to request snack items. So he would hand me a picture of what he wants for snack, and then we start pairing that with spoken language too. The little girl in the top right there is using what's called an AAC device, which is a voice output computer device. So I don't know if you can see it there, but I programmed that page to be the vocabulary from Brown Bear, what do you see? So she can press a button that says the word that she would want to say talking about that book, and then it speaks for her in a little girl's voice. We use sign language, really any modality that works for a child in any given situation. Some of the children are communicating in 5 different ways in snack time. Just whatever gets the job done.
Okay. And then OT, it looks a little bit different with each class that I go into. So with Mara's Tuesday, Thursday morning class with the kiddos that have more of the medical needs, we're working a lot on those early developmental skills. So it might just be core strengthening while we're sitting at group time. It might be helping them reach to do some of the manipulatives that Mara's doing with group time. So I do a lot of body awareness in there. So we do a lot of joint compression. So it helps them know where their body is in space, and it helps them learn how to do some of that grasp and release. And then I kind of piggyback off of PT, and I help with putting kids in gait trainers, and then we're just started a little guy in a stander, which is not his favorite. But just because some of those kids are still working on some of those crawling, walking, all of those skills. So that looks a little bit different than, you can kind of see the top picture. That is Emma's morning class, and those kids are a little bit higher functioning. So when I go in there, we're working a lot on fine motor skills that are helping them develop the hand arches and things that they need for pre-writing. Emma's other morning class are the kiddos that all have autism and are nonverbal, and they are big sensory seekers. So that class, I'm usually taking all of them down to our motor room. So you can see the one little guy here is jumping up and down because he's excited about our fine motor task. And then every kid in that class loves the ball pit. And the ball pit just helps, again, with a lot of deep pressure, and it helps them understand where their body is in space. So we go down there a lot because we do a lot of vestibular input, which is swinging, jumping, crashing, rolling. And so they're doing all of that input. And then in the afternoon class, those are the kids that are getting ready for 4K. So they're the ones that I'm really supporting with those hand development of scissor skills, writing. We start with the first letter in their name, and then we move into their whole name. So we're just really working on 4K skills, so a lot more of that fine motor. But I go into the classroom, or sometimes I pull out. So we kind of do a variety. And then physical therapy, she's working a lot on the gross motor skills. She also works a lot on core strengthening, a lot of lower body strengthening. She also does a lot of functional mobility within the hallway, so safety with gait trainers, safety with wheelchairs, and then we get to go down to the motor room, and a lot of times we'll do obstacle courses where they're working on balance and stairs and jumping and all of those gross motor skills. And then she also does a lot of playground safety. So she will go out and they'll learn how to do the stairs and the slides and all those things that they need to be able to do, but not be too impulsive and jump off the top and that kind of thing. So a lot of times we're working really close together on that.
In case anybody does not know, a gait trainer is what that little boy is in. So it helps them to be able to stand and start to support their legs. So a good example, wheelchair accessible playground. In my Tuesday, Thursday morning class, 3 of my 4 students cannot get on the playground. So, I mean, that's just an example. We have to modify things so we can move them in that way, just because they can't, wood chips, things like that make it a little bit challenging for them. So if we bring them, we have to physically pick them up to get them out there. So that's something just to work together to kind of figure out how can we make it a little bit more accessible for those students, because we get more and more like that. They're not always walking around and able to do that, but need a way to be able to access a playground that's appropriate for them. Because that, it's fenced in, it's a safe, developmentally appropriate playground for 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. And then, a wonderful thing that we would love at some point is the inclusion model with our younger, the 4K kids get it already because that's where the kids are supported. But our little 3 and 4 that are not old enough yet, the only way we can do inclusion is if they happen to be in a child care center where they have general ed peers and we can get there. But as you can see, we already have 24 kids that we're servicing within the school. It makes it really hard to have time to get to kids that are in daycares that are 3 and 4. So just figuring out, some of those are kind of our wish list for someday of trying to figure out how to best service these kids so that they are getting the model. Some children do need this small classroom with, whether it's because they're fragile health syndrome, different things, or nonverbal, and they just need a really small, quiet environment. But other ones just, children really would thrive if they did have access to some models in some way. So just, that would be something we'd be working on, trying to figure out at some point how to access that for them. What are you
And they just have a picture.
For the family.
Christmas cards.
Does anybody have any
This is my job at the meetings.
Does anybody have any questions about
or
any
curiosities even, I guess?
So I think I saw on one of your slides that these students come to you typically as they age out of county services. Okay, talk a little bit about the process of how do you identify these kids, and do you think you're finding all of them that are eligible?
That was my question too.
No, we're not finding all of them because some kids do come to kindergarten and have not had any services. There's, and so then there's a surprise at kindergarten.
But that's pretty rare these days.
It is.
Our 4K program
Yeah,
has
the
done a good job
4K,
of catching.
yes, it does. I think most of them are probably serviced. I think one thing that we find is, as the first face of the schools for these families, many of them are very nervous about the labels. Like, they really get worried. They don't want their kid to be labeled for the rest of their life. And so it's like this kind of gentle hand-holding, kind of really I'm typically the one that does the earliest intervention, the early initial assessments with these little 3-year-olds. And I really, really work hard on trying to have that team mentality. Because if I don't have the trust of them, we're not going to get anywhere. How are they going to get to kindergarten, 5th grade, 10th grade, if they don't trust us from the start? So we really work on the team mentality of it. And I think we have, how many total areas can they, they have to get in categories. So you've heard about autism, you've heard about OHI's other health impairments. We have speech and language only. We have something for the little ones that's called SDD, significant developmental delay. And that is where a lot of kids that are kind of those kids that don't necessarily have autism or Down syndrome or something that's very obvious, but like they have needs that need some support, and that label only goes till 9. So by that point, if they still have needs, then they're looking at learning disabilities or emotional, depending on whatever it is they're looking at.
The actual process of that too starts, so if they're in birth to 3, then our school psych will go and meet, and they have it
2 years, 9 months.
Yeah,
At
so
2 years, 9 months.
when they reach a certain age, she goes and meets with the birth to 3 team, meets the child, meets the parents, And then from there, we start the evaluation process, and then she determines, does this kiddo maybe need just speech? Does the kiddo need OT, PT involved? And then we go through an evaluation, which we all have certain tests we give, and then those evaluations are presented to the parents, and then we decide, does that child, would they benefit from our services?
So
And
first, the
not-
county has figured out a way to identify these
Yeah,
students.
because they're
Yes.
in birth to 3 at that
Right.
point.
A lot of doctor referrals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we don't get everybody from birth to 3. We also
No.
have a developmental screening in the
Yeah,
fall.
which- yeah.
We will screen children at any point during the year if we get contacted by a
Yeah.
parent. Sometimes it's a doctor referral at like a, 3-year-old well-child checkup or something, and then they come to us in that
Or
way.
daycare centers too
Or
will
daycare,
contact
yeah.
us and, we get a number that way too.
And you're working with both counties?
Yeah.
Awesome.
So one of the things that we hear is the increase in special education for students and what are you seeing? You've all been with us for a while. What are you noticing?
We've had a huge increase.
Yes.
You have-
Well, and I think that it's not only increase in numbers, it's increase in need.
Yeah.
So out of the 24 kids that are in our program, I service 14 and PT services 9. So like even 4 years ago,
Yeah.
it might have been like I service 7 and PT services 1 or 2.
Yeah.
So I think the kids are coming to us with more needs than just social and speech. So we're noticing that they're more involved, needing more services.
Yeah, no, that covered it well, I think, yeah.
It strikes me, the tremendous challenge that you have, and I can understand why you said every day is an adventure. You're working with really challenging little ones.
We actually all love it, though.
Yes, we do.
And that's what I was going to say, I can tell
Yeah.
that. I hope you realize what a gift that is for those children and for those families. Because you are helping them to have a foundation for learning, for being ready, just to live and to play. But also, when you were talking about this, the trust that you establish with these families, that will last for the entire time that we are serving them. So, thank you
It
for
is
the really important work you do individually and collectively for our littlest ones. And thank you for being here tonight.
Yeah.
Very much.
Thank you very much.
And it's
You
not
ever
rude
wanna
if you
come
need
and
to
help?
leave.
Yeah, if you ever want to stop in, feel free
You'll run
to
out, but you
Mark has stopped in a few times. He's experienced the fun.
So that's a
That's
good
great.
question, where is your
Yeah.
classroom?
Well,
Oh, where's the
Rocky
class? Yeah, at Rocky
At
Branch.
Rocky.
okay. Well, I'll take you up on that invitation.
Yeah.
So thank you for being here tonight, and it's
Thank
not
you.
rude to leave.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We now have some additional reports, and we will turn to our students over here on this side. Yep, students first.
Well,
So Ben and Jada, yep.
I'll just talk a little bit about like what the school is like right now, and then also the cell phone use at the high school. Obviously, as we come closer to the break, I think kids are getting a little fatigued, but that's expected. But activities are going great so far. Basketball is doing well. We have our Spirit Week this week, and I've seen some participation so far, so that's very good. But in terms of the cell phone use, it's been inconsistent across the students, I would say. Some students, specifically the underclassmen and more the freshmen, are adhering to that policy. The current one, quite strictly, I would say. And I'm in some classes right now that are that have freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors, so I can see all the grades. But I see the freshmen following it very consistently, and then I see the juniors and the seniors finding those loopholes around it where they're pulling it out and they're looking at the notification they got, or they're sitting with it behind their Chromebook scrolling on it, and sometimes things like that happen, and it's just those loopholes are there. I've also seen the phone boxes that we have at the high school aren't being utilized very much, if at all, in some classes. It started out the year pretty strong with most of the class using it, and then within the first couple weeks we saw that diminish, and now we have some classes only 1 or 2 people are putting them in them out of a class that has 30. So I think things are just inconsistent so far across that. And it's a new policy, especially with the phone box policy is a newer policy. So I think there's that. And also kids just feel for some reason like it's a breach of their privacy. And that's high schoolers being high schoolers. But I think trying to find a way around that is what is truly needed. So those are my observations of this.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you. Jada, do you have something to add?
Oh, yeah, I think the policy definitely has a lot of mixed reactions, as one would think it does. I think most students do tend to follow it, but there is that group that doesn't follow it, and I think it's just important that the policy is being enforced consistently across all classes, and so students could build that routine instead of adjusting based off every different class. And I think the passing time, allowing us to use it during passing time, is a big part of utilizing your time wisely. But I know a lot of students run into the issue where the Wi-Fi is disabled for us, so the school does tend to be a dead zone where students can't use their phone, especially in the locker bays. You don't have any, you have SOS. And I know like people tend to pull their phone out during class time because they have that Wi-Fi or the cell service in different classrooms. So I feel like that is an increasing issue because they are not really able to check it during passing time with no cell service.
So you can't speak for all the students, but if you were, what would you imagine people would think of why this policy is in place? I imagine it's a range of perspectives, but what would people think of why you can't use your phone at school?
I've heard people say, oh, they just think the school is trying to be like a prison, just trying to lock the fun out of it. I've also heard people understand the reasons why. I truly think the overall reaction is a lot of kids don't know why. I don't think they understand the policy. Even though it's been explained to us, I think it's easy for us to just think over that and think about ourselves a lot and that. But I don't think a majority of people really know why this policy is in place, and I think that's why maybe there's a little bit of this feeling like, why do we need this, right? And so I think a lot of kids don't understand the fact that the law states you need a policy, and I also think that kids are just confused on why this happened because our grade, the senior class, started freshman year with almost no restrictions on it. It was just up to the teacher's discretion on whether or not they would allow it. And then as we've gone through high school, it seems like every year there's a new barrier in the way from us using it. So for the senior class in specific, I think it's been hard because we got used to finding ways around it, or freshman year not having anything at all. But all of a sudden this year when it seems like there's more consequences and there's these phone boxes that are just like black boxes that like lock shut, right? That's like, that can come across as like a scary thought to some kids, I think. So to put there something so personal to them in that box, it feels wrong to them even though it's not. And so I just think I don't think there's any understanding across a lot of kids why this is happening, why this policy is in place.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious what you guys think would be a good policy if you ran the zoo.
I think Lidkey is going to cover it on his... I didn't want to steal it from you.
I'm asking you, Jada.
Okay, well, I know Lidkey's going to come and talk about a phone box policy where you have to put your phone in the box for attendance, so it's kind of like required. And he has that list of students who like don't have a phone or they need a phone for health things. So I feel like that would be definitely a good system because it makes students put their phone in the box. Versus I know some students just say, oh, it's in my locker, but really it's on them.
Exactly. Okay.
So,
And I mean, you would, if you were in Mr. Lidkey's position, would you support that policy?
Yeah, I think that is definitely like the...
Either one wants my position.
Yeah, future administrator.
I think that's what it's going to come down to because it's enforcing that box policy where they're not going to be tempted to look at it.
Yeah.
So.
I think you have to find ways. If you were to not go with that policy, I do think that policy is the right policy, but if you were to not go with that policy, I think you have to find ways for kids to be more engaged across the board, because it's not just certain classes that it's happening in. I know almost every single class in the school, there's kids that are trying to sneak their phone out. And some teachers, I would say, catch it easier than others, but I don't know that across the board you can like label certain classes as ones that fall in that. I think it's just happening across the board. So I think part of that would maybe be engagement in the classroom. Just how can we find a way for students across every single grade to stay engaged? Because freshmen are going to stay engaged a lot more with your activities in class than your seniors that are going to start to have that question of, wait, why are we doing this like puzzle matching game with our flashcards, right? Because that's not as engaging as it is to a freshman. It's like, I get a sucker because I did this right, but the seniors are like, I'm not going to get a sucker in college or my post-secondary life, so why should I do this, right? And so that's when the temptation of, oh, I can just sneak my phone right now because I have 10 notifications that went off in the past 30 minutes. So I think trying to find something that's more engaging across those classes, especially those classes that include all the grades, is something that's going to be more needed, especially in the elective classes.
Interesting. I'm going to imagine if I were a teacher, I would say it's pretty hard to compete with a little phone that can let you do so many things.
Yeah.
And
And that's where
a big challenge,
That's where I
isn't
think
it?
the policy of just like making sure that in order to get marked for attendance that day, you should put it in there is probably the most like surefire way to make sure that it's consistent across the board, because I think right now that's the issue is it's inconsistent. Or as Mr. Licky put it, was it consistently inconsistent?
Correct.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you're saying if you have a rule, make sure you enforce the rule.
Yeah, and I think the hard thing about
Fair
the
enough.
rule is that it's just, no matter how many times you put it set in stone, there's gonna be different interpretations of it. And so, I mean, it just depends on the day, I think, is at the beginning of the year, it's easier to put it in at the beginning of the year, but as students and teachers get tired throughout the year, it gets a little bit more lax, or they don't see it as often because kids are finding different ways around it. I mean, the cop's not gonna pull over someone who breaks the law without the cop seeing them, so it's hard to monitor something that the teachers don't see happening.
Yeah.
So.
Their cell phones are clearly addicting, and don't you think a lot of the adults too, it's hard, it's a challenge for the adults to model the excellent phone etiquette as well. It's hard. Agree.
You know, one of the things at school that you're experiencing is, and you're learning, is a lot more than just what your classes are teaching you, et cetera. And one of my takeaways from this conversation, but just watching how this has unfolded the last couple of years, is what you're seeing and what you're observing is how organizations handle significant change. And you're going through it right now, and you just listed out a whole bunch of things. Change as dramatic, and this is dramatic, even though these are little phones, it's pretty dramatic. It's not life-ending or some of those kinds of things, but it's a very significant cultural change in the culture of the high school. And these things don't happen because we pass a rule and click, we throw a switch and now everybody's on board, okay? We have to get the teachers and administrators, the school board has to be on board, and every individual student, the hundreds of students in the high school, all have to learn this, adapt to it, and change. 5 years from now, this will be a very different environment. You just explained it, the seniors are handling this very different than the freshmen are handling. I mean, always, whether you're in college or you're in high school, make the freshmen do it because the freshmen will comply, okay? By the time they're seniors, they've figured out ways around it, all right? This is age old, this has always been around for a long time. But, so this is, in my mind, should be one of your takeaways, is understanding how organizations change. I'm old enough to remember when seat belts were mandated, right? Okay?
It's pretty old.
No, I'm looking at the wrong people when I say that. You remember, I remember how long it took and how hard it was to require people to put their seat belts on, okay? That's just another example years ago how this happens. This happens all of the time. You're learning how this happens, and I think observe it and pay attention to it, because I think this is very valuable for you, policy aside, just on the fact that you just can't decree stuff and expect everything to happen. We've all got to get on board. We've all got to refine, talk about it, and process it, so.
Well, I think something like that could be, like you just said, could be very beneficial to like tell, especially the senior class, but I think every grade is just like how this change is being implemented and why it seems like for some of us it's happening so instantly, but really it's over a large 5-year plan, right, or a 10-year plan, or just an evolving plan, right? And I think that's the issue, is because every year it just seems like a new rule is set in place, but explaining the overarching picture, I think, would help kids to understand why this is happening. And I think that's truly one of the main reasons why kids don't comply with it, is because they just don't understand it. And
They
that's
don't
a big
understand it or they don't accept it.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't want to understand
And
it.
there's
There
part,
you go.
both of that, there's a lot of gray area between them, but accepting and understanding it is one, because I don't really want to understand it until I can accept it and own it. And that takes time. It takes time for the teachers, takes time for everybody, so this is gonna evolve for a while, but it's good.
Well, thank you, oh,
I
go
can give you
ahead.
just some numbers,
You
so that
bet.
you have it from our side of things. So we have 230 infractions right now for the year, so we're nearly halfway through the year. So that's 230 individual students. So that is 21% of our student body has been found to have one time where they've had their phone out and it's been referred to our office. Students who have 2 infractions, it drops dramatically, it's less than 20. It's about 18 students. Students who have 3 or more, we have 4 students. Okay, so we do have these initial first referrals. In that referral itself, it's a phone call home. It is a talk in terms of why we believe it's important. So we don't see as much repetitive behavior once we have that initial intervention. We did compare our numbers to the neighbors to the north as well with Hudson. They have 1,700 students, because we always talk and we share, right? We have the same policy in place that says students can not have them during instructional time, which is what this DPI is asking for you to adopt as a board. They have roughly 10.5% of their student body with one referral. So we are twice as high in terms of the likelihood. The difference that we found is the consequence. So the consequence for us is the student who has it in the first infraction with the teacher is holding the phone for the block, calling parents and notifying that we have an infraction. Second offense then is where the student comes to us, we have a parent meeting with the student and move in that direction. Third offense then is it's down with us for a week. In Hudson's model, it is down in the office on the first time and parents are picking it up. So the Hudson's model, in essence, in talking with their administrative team, more often than not, parents are purchasing the phones, parents are paying for the phone plans. Therefore, we're going to talk with the parent initially right out of the gate, specifically inconveniencing the parent to come in to pick it up and keeping it as a more of a parent-student situation. So they have about the same second and third offenses that we do, so we're not seeing any major change there. But we're, as an admin team, Jada and Ben have offered their input. They've been fantastic in the conversations that Mr. Bell, myself, and I have with both Jada and Ben. They understand the predicament we're in, but we continually get progressive with what I would say, tightening the vice of that. And so, again, they know that we really only have 1 to 2 levers to pull before we're a 7 to 3 school that's banning phones, right? The first lever would be to increase the consequence that we would have on the initial infraction with the hopes that it would determine, or less kids would want that consequence to occur. The second then is the attendance policy with the black box itself. And then really after that, there's not much else we can do other than do a 7 to 3 ban, right? Which is a no phone for the entire day. The student, I think, know that we are continually advocating to teach responsibility, but we haven't found where that line of responsibility is yet. And so we're really trying hard to work with our student body in that. And again, I think overall, I think the students would say, when I walk around in classrooms, there are fewer kids, way fewer kids that are on phones just out in the open because they know they're going to get it taken away. We have teachers saying there is more increased conversations, that we have better connectedness in our WINS side of things, even though the kids are like, I have to talk, but we're seeing kids playing games, interacting again. So we are seeing the benefits of it. It is a challenge though for our admin team, if you think of just those write-ups alone, the phone calls, the talking and documenting, but we're not giving up on it and we're gonna keep moving forward.
Good, thank you.
Do you think you're actually, with that 21%-ish, are you actually catching most of the people who have, or do you think that's maybe
you think
even?
of us catching, it's not us. Our first line of
Teachers.
defense is 70 staff in our classrooms.
Right.
So when we talk about consistently inconsistent, we were really great, I would say the first 3 to 4 weeks.
Right.
But then it turned into a don't ask, don't tell policy, right? So
Right.
if the phone's in my pocket, they're not asking me to put it in the box. The first day I do that, I don't have to put my phone in the box anymore because they didn't ask me. So we're gonna have to either revisit that and shift that back. We talk about that with our building leadership team. And again, 3 administrators cannot be in 75 to 80 classrooms. It is as only strong as our first line of defense, which is where our teacher's classroom environment is. We did everything, every staff meeting, we're putting the Braveheart blue face on and hold the line. If you remember that, right? We're trying to hold the line, but there are pockets, as the kids would say, for sure, where they know where they can and where they can't.
Well, from a
Thank you,
board
guys.
point of view, we don't like to pass policy that we aren't going to have
Correct.
implemented. So good luck.
Thank you. On that, I'm going back to the double check.
Thank you for being here. And Jada and Ben, thanks.
You gotta go, Ben? Yeah, Ben.
All right.
Jazz band.
All right. Good. All right, so let's move on to our next batch of reports, and that is we have a WIG update from Mark. And you've got to be pretty proud of your staff today, who did a very nice
Yes,
job. and
100%.
day
I
in
was
and
going
day
to
out,
give a
so-
shout out to them. It is, as one who's lucky enough to observe them from time to time, it is a beautiful symphony when I walk in there. A beautiful germy symphony, I would say. They have immune systems of iron somehow. Just the amount of times I watch someone just randomly sneeze in someone's direction, it's amazing. But truly, just watching through play, all of the therapists and the teachers just deliver that really, really important early intervention is just amazing to see. So honestly, if you ever have a moment to come just trying to check it out, it's definitely worth it. And you'll see lots of very, very cool stuff. So again, shout out to them. This is just going to be a quick kind of initial WIG update, and I realize we are in December, so we're getting at this a little bit late, and you'll probably hear from me again in a month or two with more of a mid-year update. So just a little review of kind of what our special education WIG is. This is slightly different from last year. We made a slight adjustment to it. Essentially, 80% of special education students will show above average growth or demonstrate average proficiency on universal reading screeners based on fall to spring. What we just adjusted there is we added the or demonstrate average proficiency because we thought it was important for if students were already proficient that would be a factor. And we did change the kind of the growth percentile from 65, which I think we realized was maybe a really aggressive target, to 50. So we want to see a growth above that 50th percentile when it comes from fall to spring. So we did a slight adjustment to what our WIG was, but nothing major when it comes to that. Some of the things that we're doing this year as far as kind of committing to our lead measure, and I think the first and most important one is that we want to make sure that our special education WIG isn't an add-on or an addition to the plate for our staff. So our WIG really, I think, is supported by all of the building level WIGs. And so that is something that's really important. So you heard from the elementary school, for example, about their work to try to make sure that all students are proficient. Obviously, our work in special education is supporting that as well. Things like the high school, working on kind of reading proficiency and reading strategies. Again, all things that are very much working together toward the special education WIG. Continuing the ongoing work as far as kind of the job-alike PLC model. Adopted kind of a PLC notebook that Mary Beth had kind of put together for the high school at our elementary level. So we're kind of following that model, making sure we're keeping notes. We have some guiding questions for our elementary folks to meet on and address every single month. So they meet every month on the first Thursday, unless it's kind of already taken, and then we kind of bump it to another day. We're committed to meeting every single month for those teams because we believe that's really important work. We are coming up on kind of the finishing up of kind of the winter round of kind of screeners, and so some of our next meetings will be reviewing that data and looking at kind of how our growth numbers look from fall to winter. Basically, we kind of break that down into a behavioral focus, an academic focus, and or a functional focus when it comes to those folks. We're doing something similar at the middle school. So we're having the middle school doing some meetings. The SLD team spent some time at one of our last in-service meetings or days, really just talking as a group of four academic focused teachers on what they're doing in each of their classrooms, and for us to try to identify some core foundational things that we're all doing, and then as well as some add-ons that we're doing in each of those classes. And then when we look at our screening data, the idea will be to kind of do some comparing from teacher to teacher to see, okay, what is it that you might be doing that is working really well, and how can I learn from you? We're also doing a couple different pilots at the elementary and the middle school as far as kind of experimenting with some different instructional strategies and models to see kind of, again, what is going to work best. At the high school, we've done some different work on kind of looking at kind of our special education service delivery model. We're looking at some other districts who also kind of operate on a block system with a little intervention time to see like what we can learn from them as far as some different things that we can do with that time. So some different things are going on there as well. And then coming up here, once we have kind of all of our screening data collected, I think the middle school is the last one to kind of collect that. We're going to have some data retreats and we're going to look at some of those growth data from fall to the winter. A lot of our data really that I've just pulled for this time is really just based on proficiency. So I went through and I just did pull kind of what our baseline proficient numbers look like for our students in special education across the board from K through 5 and then also middle school and high school. So this is just kind of a starting point. Our goal is really based around growth and proficiency. So this kind of gives you kind of an idea of where we are right now. And when you kind of reference back to maybe some of the data that the elementary folks had shared, you can kind of see where that is compared to that. You'll notice that kind of proficiency starts a little bit higher at the earlier levels and then kind of slowly kind of drops off. I think a lot of that is due to the gap increasing between kind of what students and what the expectations are for a kindergartner versus a fifth grader. So that's fairly common, I think, when you look at most data sets as far as that drop there. You can see the proficiency data there, and then here it is for the high school and the middle school. You'll notice we have a few lower numbers at the high school, and that's mainly because the high school really only, middle school tests all of their kids, and that's all kids, special education or not, 6 through 8. The high school really focuses on the kids who are receiving intervention. And so data, if a student is either on monitor or they're working on something else and we have data to show that they're already proficient, we don't usually screen those kids with STAR, but the ones that do get academic intervention are screened, and you can see the data there. This is just a reference document. This was the end of the year data from last year. Just wanted to include that. And then finally, just kind of different things as far as monitoring our WIG. We don't have our growth data quite available quite yet. That will be available, I would say, within the next month. Fortunately this year, last year, if you remember, we were using 3 different screening tools because we had AIMSweb, we had FastBridge, and STAR. This year we've really made, I think, a good decision to really kind of streamline that. And we have AIMSweb kind of across the board, K-5, and then STAR 6 through 12. We continue to work hard to try to make sure that students are taking testing seriously by sometimes incentivizing them a little bit and working hard to make sure that they're giving us their best effort because we're using that data to kind of evaluate programming. And then finally, NextPath. Mary Beth kind of found this great tool that we can use for a kind of review of our data. And it really has allowed some much more efficient reporting and data collection compared to some of our last tool. And so that has been kind of a game changer for kind of looking at our data. Special ed teachers also have their caseload now, and they can click one button and see attendance, academic, and behavioral data all in one spot. And so it's really been a nice way for teachers to see everything for their kids. So that, I think, is the WIG in a nutshell. And you'll hear from me again in a month or 2. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you
Mark.
very much for your work and for being here tonight. All right, our next report is an update about special education reimbursement, and Lynette, please.
Yeah, so let's think back, sorry about the voice. Let's think back when the 25-27 biennium budget was passed. A lot of us in the room and organizations that we are affiliated with were really promoting and encouraging the legislature to increase special education funding. And although it was not passed at a percentage that some of us may have thought it should be, we were still celebrating what the expectation was. So what was communicated out when the budget was passed was that special education reimbursement would be 42% in the first year, so in this year, 25-26, and then go to 45% in the second year, 26-27. So I'm here to give you an update on where that is. And remember, special education reimbursement is reimbursing expenses from the prior year. So we're getting the reimbursement this year for expenses last year, and we'll go through a little bit of that. Okay, so what is special education categorical aid? It's really the main categorical aid program that supports special education in Wisconsin. And as I said, it's costs, it's reimbursement for costs that are from the previous year, and those have to be qualifying costs. How does it work? So special education aid is some certain, and we've talked about this in the past, but just to recap. So when they say 42%, it's not a guaranteed percentage. They're putting in a some certain appropriation, so it's a specific dollar amount of money that they hope, and I'll use air quotes, they hope provides 42% reimbursement to districts. If it doesn't, then it's prorated down from there, or up, if it's a good year. Some sufficient means that whatever those costs and reimbursements would be, they will put that much money in to meet that. Okay, so we're talking about some certain
Question on that.
Yes.
So some certain, but on previous years, so don't they know what those are?
That's a great question. So districts report, we provide an annual report of prior year expenses, and those reports are due in September.
Okay.
And
when is this fund allocated?
Get those financial reports submitted on time? No. And in fact, the largest district in the state of Wisconsin, DPI is still collecting 24-25 financial data from them. And so that's great. You have you've teed this up nicely.
Perfect.
Okay, so here's a little bit of history, and I borrowed this visual from WASBO, who then also borrowed it from, and I'm sorry, I can't read it from here with my glasses on.
Budget paper
Yeah, data summary, yeah. Okay, so, and Allison has brought this up every time we talk about special ed. Years ago, it was a 70% reimbursement, and it was guaranteed. 70% no matter what that costs, districts were reimbursed that. So you can see the decline over the years, and of course expenses have increased, but the pot of money has not increased at the same rate. So here we are sitting with the estimate for 25-26 of 42%. Last year, where it came in at all in, all done was 30.64. Okay, so we were really celebrating the idea that we might get 42%. Now, veteran finance directors and business managers were not expecting 42%, and here's why. This is a little bit of history of the fiscal year. So what were the state budget estimates, and then where did things land? 21-22 wasn't so bad, right? They were saying 28.2%, and it came in at 29.6. So let's move down to 25-26. This year was estimated at 42%, and we received our first payment in November, and DPI is using an estimate of 35%. And we believe that they always use a conservative estimate because districts are still reporting their data, and they don't want to claw back money from districts, right? So they want to be able to true up everything then at the end of the year, and maybe, and oftentimes it increases, the actual percentage increases. But I haven't talked to any other business manager or finance director who was using that conservative of a number of 35%. So we do think that it will end up slightly higher than that, but this is something we need to keep our eyes on and plan for, because if it does come in at 35%, the way that impacts the budget that we were using and planning on is about $250,000. So those are real numbers for River Falls. You know, one of the other things related to the state budget and why we were celebrating the 42%, as you know, there was also no increase in the pot of state aid money. And this is the first time since 2009-10 that the state has not increased the pot of just regular state equalization aid. And that year happened to be a year that they were in a deficit. Our state is sitting on billions of dollars in surplus and yet chose not to increase that pot of equalization aid. So this feels, I guess when you couple that, is sort of doubly concerning, so.
Mm-hmm. And is the reason that the estimate currently is not keeping up with it? I mean, the 42% estimate was probably based on spending from the prior year, what we estimated as the spending for the prior year. Is spending up, and therefore this percentage estimate is?
Very much so.
Yeah, so increased needs for services.
Mm-hmm.
Every district is seeing that.
Yes.
And so the state could say, hey, well, we shot for this, but here's the reality, you know. Yeah, here we are.
So we will see reimbursements November through March will be at that 35%. And then we won't actually know what the true-up number is until we receive our payment in June. So until then, you know, we're gonna dial back and plan on a 35% increase and see what happens at the end of the year.
What were we planning on? What did you have kind of as a budget?
Like 40.
I had 40.
40, okay.
Which makes a lot of sense when you look at the history of what was estimated and what the actual
Sure, yeah.
was. It was a good number to start with. It was conservative.
Yep.
There currently, there's a bill in the legislature to basically change it to make it be some sufficient. And so that, to what Allison said, we understand the complexities of the dynamic of those things, the realisticness of this bill passing, but we feel like it, as a district who was, provided with this information and use that information in our budgeting, it would be nice if there was one or two things. One, the ideal is that they would make an appropriate allocation, or maybe not take such a large stance and plaster the historic 42% increase out and communicate that out if there was not certainty that it was actually going to be there. Yeah. So as you can, make sure we communicate that to our legislators. And again, we're hoping the news ends up being a little bit better, but this is part of the budget planning process.
Well, it was put out there, well, we're not giving you the per student increase, or we're not increasing that, but look what we're doing for special ed. We're really raising special ed. Well, are you? No. I mean, it's not really happening. So is our transfer from our general fund really going to be so much less this year? It's certainly not going to be adequate to make up for what we're not getting on the per student, right? So, yeah. Something's got to change.
We will adjust.
So we heard a really good example of how this is coming at us, right? I mean, they're talking about how many more students they've got in the 2 and 3 year old,
with greater need.
3 and 4 year old category.
With greater need.
And with greater need. And this is going to move through for the next dozen years or so. So it's just coming at us, and we can see that increase even at the lowest level. We had a great example of it tonight. So.
Thank you, Lynette. It's important for people to understand this information inside and outside the district. All right, we are going to move on to the superintendent report. And I'm just drawing your attention to the fact that this update is going to be about the cell phone legislation. So there will be other times when board members are able to provide input about what we'd like to see in a policy. Today, we're looking at what the legislature expects.
Yeah, so it was nice to hear from Ben and Jada.
Mm-hmm.
I really appreciate it. It's always really tricky to represent the entire student body. You guys did a good job. And I also appreciate the board kind of carving that time in to give our students a chance to give feedback. It's one thing if the principal or a superintendent represents what's happening in the schools. It's another thing to have the students actually speak to it. So I appreciate that. So my job tonight is to talk a little bit about the new cell phone law that was passed and give some kind of FAQs and clarification on where we sit as a school district in response to that new law. So Act 42 requires all school boards to adopt a local policy that's subject to limited expectations, prohibits students from using certain wireless communication devices during instructional time. We have to adopt that policy by July 1 of 26. So do we have a policy now? No, we don't. We do have handbook expectations. We do have general school expectations that communicate to our students and families what our expectations for use of wireless communication devices are, but we don't, it's not specifically addressed in a policy. So we will have to adopt a policy by July 1 of 26. So the process between now and then is to look at our current practices at every building. Obviously the focus is on the high school, but at every building, identify if our current practices are working for us, and or if there's other expectations or appropriate details that we want to include and bring to the board a cell phone policy that reflects that. And so we'll do that work. Now, we're doing a lot of Neola policy work as well. My recommendation for this is that we would take time at a committee meeting to have some conversations around that first, and then do a normal first and second read. So that timing won't look exactly like an ad hoc policy committee, because I think we need a little time just to make sure we dig into that. So we'll give you specific details on that, but that's my recommendation for how we would do it. So I thought tonight we'd just do a quick flyover of the new law, okay? And so the first thing is, okay, well, does the law define what a wireless communication device is? And it does. It says it's a portable wireless device that has the capability to provide voice messaging or other data communication between two or more parties. Sounds nice, right? It does list some things like cell phones, tablets, laptops, and gaming devices. It doesn't list everything, though, that would meet that, like certain smartwatches. So we will have to make sure that we're very clear, as our students said, with what would be a wireless communication device in our policy based on that criteria. One thing about the policy is it doesn't restrict or even really address student use of district-issued devices. So that's a little interesting piece of this.
And does our policy, I don't want to
get to
this, but if I have an Apple Watch, do I have to put that in the black box too?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
That you're not
Functions
expected
like
to.
a phone.
Right.
Just the phones.
Just turn the ringer off or whatever when you're.
Yeah, there's nothing really enforcing the watches yet, more so the headphones and the phones.
And the buds, yeah, the earbuds are the big one, and those, they're not supposed to have on. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I think too, because, you want that, but then also these devices are a form of security when something happens.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so how does the new law distinguish between instructional and non-instructional time? So it says that it prohibits student use during instructional time, but it doesn't define that term. Okay, so as a school district, we will need to either A, develop and include an operational definition of instructional time in our policy, or B, adopt a policy that broadly restricts student use of covered devices during a full period that would include anything that could be defined as instructional time. So you heard Kit and students talk a little bit about the two different things there. So our current practices define instructional time at the high school, as opposed to K-8, where we broadly say you can't have your cell phone out at any time or can't use it at any time. And so that's the decision and the recommendations that we will bring forth. The law doesn't require one or the other. We can do either. The law just says you have to prohibit student use during instructional time. So that's something that we will have to do. And so practically speaking, we're going to have to communicate rules and expectations that would apply also to non-instructional time, especially at the high school. Carve-outs. So the law, from a statutory standpoint, has some exceptions to this prohibition. So basically, we couldn't create a policy that would prohibit the use of these things because these are exceptions within the statute. The first exception is if it is in the student's IEP or a plan that's developed under Section 504, we couldn't restrict their use. If the cell phone or personal communication device is used to manage the pupil's health care, we can't prohibit that. in the event of an emergency or perceived threat, we can't prevent that. And use authorized by a teacher for educational purposes, we can't prohibit that. So I'm not gonna get into the details. It'll be our job to create recommendations around how we create this policy that's not out of step with the law. And we will do that. But what I'm communicating to you clearly is there's some complexities around some of these. Some of these are pretty cut and dried, but others are more gray for interpretation. And so it points to what a teacher deals with even now, or even when we have a tighter policy on how they're supposed to navigate this situation. It is on the surface fairly straightforward, no cell phones during instructional time. In actuality, there's a lot of complexities that our students have to work through and understand, our teachers have to work through and work on how they're going to commit to it, and our admin team and how it's going to roll out. So more to come on that, but if you're asked about the carve-outs, those are the carve-outs. And then, can local policies be more restrictive? Sure, they can be more restrictive than what's out there, but you can't, you still have to observe those statutory exceptions. So you couldn't create a policy that says absolutely no cell phones, even if you have an IEP. Clearly, we're not gonna do that, and you couldn't. And then there's some reporting expectations. So we will provide a copy of the local device policy to all enrolled students, so they can review it very carefully and understand it. It's easy. And no later than the 1st of October, we will have to submit that to DPI. And though it's not addressed, obviously the devil is in the details. We've talked about that. So we'll have to dedicate time and resources and planning to have a consistent approach to enforcement. I think Ben and Jada did a really nice job explaining the consistency piece is important. So. Questions?
Well, so when you say you'll get to it in the event of an emergency or a perceived threat, they can use their cell phone, but if it's in the black box, they can't use it.
Yeah, so there's some complexities to the
Right.
law.
Right.
So I think what it means is if a student is found to be using their cell phone, which they can if it's in that black box, but if they were found to be using their cell phone and it was proven that there was an actual or perceived threat, then the school couldn't give them a cell phone violation or something of that nature.
Yeah, okay. I wonder too, are there school districts, I don't have a problem with this policy, but are there school districts that are saying, hey, we need to all use our cell phones appropriately. Put your cell phones away, in your pocket, and don't use them during class time.
So many school districts had that policy
Before.
up through Ben was mentioning, how his reality was when he became a freshman. I think what became abundantly clear is it wasn't working.
Right.
It was a huge stressor on teachers to navigate. It was confusing for students because there was different expectations from first block to second block to third block. So there's been an evolution on how schools and school districts should respond to use of personal devices. So are there still school districts out there that do that? Not that I'm aware of. Most school districts have moved to more restrictive
More like
policies.
the boxes and whatever.
Yeah.
Because it's a challenge everywhere. I mean, it's a challenge in
Correct.
the workplace. It's
It
a challenge
is.
in my dining room.
Mine too. And not just by my kids.
Yeah.
I mean, we all are, I think we're all susceptible to it, right? So
Yeah.
this isn't anything that we're taking lightly, but I also think if you point it back to our mission and our vision and the goals that we have set, we're focused on academic growth, academic achievement for students. We're focused on creating engaging environments that help kids think about their futures. And the question would be ready access to your cell phone anytime you want versus restricted access to certain times of the day. Which one can help us achieve our goals more?
Yeah.
And we see it as the latter.
Yep, you can always change it to in the future as things evolve.
Yep.
Well, thank you for that update,
Yep.
and I know that we will be deliberate and careful in establishing our policy in accordance with this legislation. All right, we're going to move on to action items. Before the board this evening, we have meeting minutes from the November 17th regular Board of Education meeting. We have bills that have been submitted for payment, as well as recommendations regarding employment. On this consent agenda, we also have all of the items that will be a second reading that are listed under item 4. and then the first readings under item 5. Is there anybody who would like to have something removed from the consent agenda? All right, then is there a motion to approve minutes, bills, employment, and the Neola policies as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, that was Monica, okay. And, okay. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion is carried 6-0. All right, the Policy Ad Hoc Committee met on December 1st, and we went through a number of policies. The items that you see in numbers 1 through 9 are the ones that we had some measure of conversation about. So I'm going to take a motion to approve the first reading of all of them and a second, and then David is going to go through them and highlight the specific individual issues that we looked at when we were discussing it. So everybody's on the same page. So is there a motion to approve all of the policies listed in 1 through 9 under letter B? This will be a first reading.
So moved.
Thank you, Allison. Is there a second?
Second.
Mike, you get that one. All right, Dave, can you go through all of them, please?
Yep, so I'm starting on page 136, 2271, Early College Credit Program. This is the simplest change of all. The only change that we made is we went with a consistent use of the word student instead of child. That was a intentional thing there. And then we also are committed, this represents the current practice, but the board is okay with a year from now revisiting some of the requirements for entry, specifically the GPA requirements and the concept of undue hardship. So that's more to come, and that's kind of why that was here. But the only practical change there was the change from child to student. So that covers 136 and 137. Moving to 138, which is policy 2370, educational options provided by the district. Two changes there. We added at the last sentence of the first paragraph, making sure we know that it's not intended to be an exhausted list. So we're clear that like there's more than this. This is just a sampling. And then we moved some things around into the last paragraph. We put notification of educational options, and that highlights the posting requirement that is associated with this, that our Ed Pro team will talk about in January. So we just moved that around and highlighted word for word, not just naming the policy there. So that's what we did there. Moving on to page 140, that's health education. The last sentence we adjusted. We were clear that the health teacher is the person who is the leader of the development of that curriculum. So the sentence was changed to, in implementing the program, the health teacher may use district and outside resources, including DPI guidelines and consultants. And then we added the with administrative approval piece. That sentence was not worded that way in the first version of it. Moving on to 141, human growth and development. We clarified kind of how we described in the first sentence there, Wisconsin state statutes. We wanted to read so people understand, and it wasn't maybe readable in a nice way. And then we clarified letter A just below that, medically accurate and when age appropriate address the following topics. Again, making sure that both of those elements are covered within that, medically accurate and age appropriate. And then on page 142, the third to the bottom paragraph, which addresses the Citizen Advisory Committee, we included as part of the regular curriculum review cycle. So that provides the clarity on the interval at which, at minimum, that advisory committee would be called. Moving on to 143, public complaints. This is policies that we had recently adopted, so there wasn't a lot of changes. But because it was smushing together 3 policies, we had to remove some language that was duplicated in there, and we did that, fixed the headings. And then there were 2 items specifically that we addressed on page 144. In the third paragraph under public complaints about instructional library media, we had made this change in a prior policy where we removed the word student from the protected group there. So it's the basis of sex, not the basis of student's sex. So that's what that one is. That's a change. And then the last one is we added a hyperlink right in the policy to the, in step 2, which is how somebody who would want to move to step 2 could make that request. We figured out how to get that link right in there, so that's in there on page 144. Okay, moving on to 146, use of cameras and other recording devices in locker rooms. We just clarified the language on the 3rd paragraph up that is pretty clear that no person may use a cell phone to capture or record any individual locker room. That was maybe worded a little awkwardly, and we just wanted to be very clear that's the policy. So that's 146. 147, public attendance at school events. We added that first paragraph that identify that we're glad you're here and welcomes attendance of members of the community to these types of things. However, we have some expectations for your conduct.
I like that.
And then it kind of goes through the pieces there. And the only other things that we adjusted here we're reorganizing so the flow made more sense. We put all the prohibitive activities in one spot, all the access in another spot, and all the what happens if you're not following the rules in another spot.
Nice.
149, district support organizations. On the second to last paragraph, the second to last sentence, we wanted to make sure that we had in policy that use of these things is consistent with branding guidelines. We don't want to see any weird colors with our Wildcat. We're blue and gold, that's us, right? That's what that's about. And so we just wanted to be clear if we give permission that they follow those things. And then the last one on 150, maybe not last one. Yeah, no, it is last one. Good. Phew. All right, under private education or tribal school education students. This is kind of that part-time. If you're in those buckets, you can still enroll up to 2 courses. And the last two sentences clarify how we judge if a student who is in that situation, a student attending a private school or a student attending a tribal school, would meet the criteria so we place them in the correct spot. So in the high school, we're going to treat them like we would if it was a transfer in from a public school. We're going to look at their record, look at the prerequisites that they've taken, and decide if they're qualified to take the course that they're requesting to take or if there's a more appropriate placement. And then K-8, this is the part where we added the area around K-8 students will be placed at the grade level with age groups or in a subject area they are best adjusted to academically, socially, and psychologically, and where their probability of success is the highest. So it won't be just their academic readiness, there'll be other factors and vice versa. So, any questions on any of those?
Yes, any questions? All right, then all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion is carried. All right, educational program. Alan and your team.
On Monday, December 8th, the Education Program Committee met and had some, really our focus was on the report card and the kinds of ways we're responding to the district report card. It's called a report card, but the Department of Public Instruction in the state of Wisconsin does measures what they think is our where we're at academically with all districts. And one of the challenges we've got, this happens annually, it's always happened, is that the DPI keeps making some changes in the way in which these reports are presented to us. So it's hard to make year-to-year comparisons, and Mary Beth will probably get into this just a little bit. So it's been a real challenge, and the DPI has heard about it from a lot of districts, that it's very hard for us to make full use of this data when they keep changing the criteria in the assessments. However, there's a lot of good information in this that we can still use, even if we can't use longitudinal data quite yet. And part of the presentation was going into in depth on where we can see what's going on in our district, how we can compare ourselves with other districts like us to sort of see where we are, put this in perspective, and really have a discussion about what we're doing within our district to address all the things that this report card helps to inform us with. So with that introduction, I guess I'll turn it over to Mary Beth and you can talk to us about this. Sorry. I do want to acknowledge all the work that Mary Beth and Amy put into going through and parsing out this data and trying to make it useful for us. So, thank you.
Thanks. Trying to would be the key. So, as Alan mentioned, there were a lot of changes made. There were several changes made that made it difficult to compare year over year. So one of the things that we went through during the Ed Pro Committee was what we could compare and what we couldn't compare. And so one of the first pieces is they updated the thresholds, which are the cut scores of how they rank from fails to meet expectation to significantly exceed. So you can see on this slide, you can see the ones from 23-24 to 24-25, and they convened, they had a panel of educators that came together in the summer, and they have all of that information available about how they made these changes. And part of the reason these changes were made was to adapt for the cut scores that they changed last year. So it's just kind of this rolling effect that we continue to get of when a change is made, another change needs to be made to accommodate the other change that was made. So they continue to focus on 4 priority area scores: achievement, growth, target group outcomes, and on track to graduation. That has not changed since they started the report card. Names have slightly changed. Target group outcome and on track to graduation always remains at 25%. Achievement and growth varies based on our economic, socioeconomic status of students. I always forget what that word is. I did use Gemini, artificial intelligence, to help me create this, but it's an accurate portrayal of our district. We have 36.1% of the points that we get are from achievement, calculate for our overall score, and 13.9% come from growth. And then again, the target group outcomes and the on-track to graduation stay at 25%. So we see the achievement and the growth score changes, and the reason why the state did this is to try to create a comparison between districts, allowing if you have a higher socioeconomic group, your growth score weight will be higher than your achievement score. Our district continues to exceed expectation, which is 4 stars, and that takes into account all 4 of these areas. So it's not just that one area, it's not just achievement, they take all 4 of those areas that come to the final points, and we exceed expectation. So here's our 4 areas from 23-24 to 24-25. We decreased slightly in achievement. Our growth score increased nicely. Our target group also increased, as well as our on-track to graduation. However, those numbers are awesome. We were super excited when we saw them until we saw the chart. Oh, shoot. I don't know if I can do that. If you click it, Amanda, will it?
Which one?
If you just click the slide, will it? No. So we can't compare all of them, though. If you go back to here, the achievement, target group outcomes, and target graduation score, we can't compare, is what they said. The only thing we can compare is the growth. So we'll be looking forward to next year when we can. Part of that reason is because a lot of these scores, achievement falls into target group outcome and on track to graduation. And achievement is a 3-year rolling average, or 3-year weighted average.
Weighted rolling average.
And because achievement is used in target group outcomes and on track to graduation, we only have 2 years. So next year will be the first year of having the 3 years in a row.
And again, the reason that we can't use that is the DPI made some changes in the assessment. And as long as they keep making the changes, it's like comparing apples and oranges. So if they could be, hopefully the assessment will be consistent over 3 years, and we can actually put this in perspective, can see that. But this is what's going on, and this is, it's not our doing. Every school district in the state's been dealing with this frustration. So anyway.
I'm looking forward to it being consistent.
Yes, we need it to be consistent.
We continue, this is comparable districts that we compare ourselves to in other, and at other times. We're 3rd against our comparable districts for the overall accountability score. Here is the achievement score. We're 3rd for the achievement score only, so for that category. We're the same or higher than 81.6% of districts in the state. When we pull out ELA achievement and math achievement, you can also see we're third in those.
One thing I just want to interrupt, because we talked about comparing what we can compare and what we can't compare. So what we can compare is how we fit to our comparables within this report card, because those elements are exactly the same for our comparable districts. What we can't do is we can't look at River Falls School District's individual scores in 23-24 and compare our growth or lack of growth into 24-25 because of the changes to the test. So it is appropriate for us to, in our scorecard and our strategic plan, to measure ourselves and look at this data and feel good about where we stand. But what we can't do is look at the actual score from 23-24 and compare it to the actual score from 24-25. Sorry, I just want to make sure we're clear.
Right. And so it makes it challenging to use it for our own internal uses.
Yes.
But we can compare to neighboring districts. So these are our comparable districts. This is where we are in the Big Rivers Conference. We're second overall that's the overall accountability score. And then when we move into achievement, we're placed third. And our achievement is the same or higher than 81.6% of districts. The reason that is because our growth score, remember that is one thing we can compare. Our growth score put us in second for, in the Big Rivers Conference, our growth score was so much higher than other areas. When they weight that priority, when they weight the achievement versus growth, the growth is what pushed us forward. Comparing Big Rivers. We talk about post-secondary offerings and the amount of students participating in post-secondary offerings. We have seen increase year over year, with the exception of the years we lose staff that teach those courses that are specific to that AP course or dual enrollment course. The AP courses, there's less variety in those because of another person with the same degree, like a social studies teacher, could teach the AP course, a dual enrollment course, an industry recognized credential course. We have to have different certification for that, and we can't just have a different teacher step in and do those. However, the post-secondary preparation scores and the next screen that has art scores are actually from 23-24. So they're like a 2-year delay always on those scores, which I did not point out when we talked last week. And then here's the art scores from 23-24. Versus the state, River Falls versus the state. And I think it was just an interesting piece to point out. They, keep track of how many students. So 53.9% of our students successfully completed at least one of those art courses, which is something that I think we should be really proud of, because it's not just that snapshot of the day that we take the test or get the assessment and how we achieve, but it's all of the pieces that come together. And one of the things that I want to point out is last year when we talked about this, we talked about the growth score and how that was something we really needed to hit on. And I think, Mark kind of hit on the special ed piece and talked about that. They've done a ton of work, and as have all of our regular ed staff, to make sure that all of our students are growing, not just the average and expecting average growth. They want growth from every single student that comes to their buildings. New this year, on the report cards, they're also keeping track of the third grade reading. It's just information. It does not contribute to the report card. Similar to the post-secondary options in the arts percentages, that doesn't give us any points or take away points. And then the other piece that they've added is incident rates, and that's how many charges were filed or cited to students, district versus state. Our response continues to be from academic services, 3 areas that we trying to be annoyingly consistent when we talk about guaranteed and viable curriculum, authentic teacher collaboration, and high quality teaching and learning. And Amy and I talked to teachers about this, and we've talked to you about it. We really feel strongly the curriculum review cycle is kind of that place where it all starts, and when we can get through our first cycle of curriculum review. And when people are coming around to it a second time, we know that it's just going to continue to strengthen all of these areas. Our key takeaways, we had a slight increase in ELA achievement. We had a notable math achievement gain. We did have an increase in our overall gross score. And we continue to create and maintain systems that promote academic growth for all, and I kind of talked about that. We're working a lot in academic services on our multi-tiered level systems of support through the state of Wisconsin. Amy and Mark have put together a big committee, and we're continuing to refine that. And bottom line is, the district comparisons are interesting, but they're not exact comparisons. And so remembering there's a lot of really wonderful things that happen here, and that the district scorecard, the scorecard doesn't tell the whole story. Any questions?
But the things that it does tell, those are some pretty important key takeaways for us. Anything else?
Again, thank you for your work on this. Overall, this is a good report card for us. It's good news for us. However, we've always got lots of work to do, and this can help inform some of our work going forward. And those plans are pretty detailed, so thank you.
Do you want to talk about the curriculum review cycle? We discussed that at the meeting as well, and we know how important it is.
So at the meeting, we also discussed the stage 1 curriculum review cycle, the pieces that every curriculum team does, and we shared all the vision and belief statements and instructional visions that they've done and how that's changed. We showed a little bit how they prioritize standards, showed a heat map, and then talked about how they also deconstruct standards so that all the teachers in that curriculum team have the same understanding of the standards they're teaching.
Overall, it was a really good meeting, but we spent a lot of time wading around in the weeds, and you really helped us guide us through that. So I think we all learned a lot about how where we are and how we measure that and those kinds of things. So appreciate that.
Thank you. All right, finance and facilities.
All right. We also met on Monday, December 8th, and went through our agenda. The first thing that we discussed was the facility projects update. We had recently, at that time, new boilers had gone online at West Side, so that was part of last summer's projects, and getting those going. To do, one of the things we're working on this winter in short term is balancing several of the buildings, the mechanicals. When you put in these new systems, these mechanical systems, you need to go make sure that they're working properly and that they're correctly balanced. So that's something that's being done at all the buildings. We're also in the process of identifying the 2026 projects. We got some good news. We have a $900,000 credit from Kraus Anderson. And Lynette, maybe you can explain kind of the bid process and how that we got that credit.
So it's, excuse me, sorry.
You were in that early childhood class, weren't
Going, it gets better.
It does, once you grease the wheels, it's okay. So we have the GMPs, guaranteed maximum prices for each of the projects through KA when they do issue the bids or receive the bids back and accept the bids from all the subcontractors. Kraus Anderson also builds in allowances and contingencies and general conditions and other things that with some estimates. So anyway, as those projects are finished, we have change orders. Some of those change orders increase costs, some of them decrease costs. And so when that all shakes out and we start wrapping up the projects, then we look at what were the actual expenditures or where we expected to land compared to all of those GMPs and estimates of cost. And so when they were doing that full $28 million, they gave us the good news that bids came in under, or projects came in under the GMPs and some of the estimates for those alternate costs as well. So we were
So that was $900,000 that we will look to spend this next summer on a list of items. The other nice thing that we kind of hit was the interest rate earnings that we have with the money that we took in from the referendum. We put it in interest-bearing accounts, and we'll have about $1.3 million in interest earnings that we'll be able to put towards projects for the next summer. So In total, about $2 to $2.2 million will be available to us for those projects
That are in the scope of the referendum.
that are in the scope, obviously, of the referendum. Yes, of course.
We also had some additional contingency that the district held on to as well, that, for change orders.
Right.
And so we have that credit as well.
Right. When you do a referendum, you come up with a big list of things that need to get done, and you do the top items, and then whatever's left, we can tick off some more of those items that we're gonna be able to do because of those additional funds. So, the next thing on the item was, we discussed our 10-year, plan. We do periodically do a 10-year summer maintenance capital project plan, and it's required by the state. So we have a 10-year plan that we update, and we're in the process of gonna be updating the plan. The last one we did was for the 23-24. And basically what you do is you look at your facilities for the next 10 years and identify those kinds of things that need to be done. We set aside about $650,000 a year in our budget to help fund those projects. And so we'll be working through that plan and coming up with our new 10-year summer maintenance capital project plan. We went through a budget update, and Lynette did a great job tonight going through. We talked a lot about the special ed funding and kind of that process. She gave us pretty much the presentation she gave earlier tonight, so I won't rehash that, but it's coming in quite a bit less than what we kind of thought. They said 42%. It's actually, our first payment from DPI was 35%. We're hoping that's a little conservative, and that'll be more in the 38 to 39% when it's all said and done with that. The last thing on our agenda was we discussed the Community Service Fund levy. As part of our August, our annual meeting, we identify Fund 80 levy that we tax for. And those are things, Kids Club, food service, and community ed.
Not food service.
Not food service, sorry.
Just community ed.
Just community ed and Kids Club, sorry. So we talked about we've kind of kept it at a flat dollar amount, and the dollar amount hasn't changed over the last 5 years, I think it is. So we have a plan in place to try to increase that by about $40,000 a year over the next 3 years to help increase our fund balance. That we can use our fund balance is running at about 9.9% of revenues right now, and we want to get that up. So after 3 years, it'll be up to just under 17%. Anything else you want to say on that?
Yeah, so basically, we ran a few scenarios. It's not something that's gonna happen overnight, but we talked about setting goal ranges like we do with our general fund balance. We have a policy that says, we should maintain a fund balance between 25 and 30% in general fund. So we talked about setting something in place similar for Fund 80. And so that was the recommendation, to set that, to eventually get to, or the goal to get to, between a 15 and 20% fund balance in Fund 80. And also look at how much of the levy, what percentage of the levy is funding the total expenses in Fund 80 at a 20 to 25% range. So in the scenarios that I provided, you can see it takes a few years, and things will change. The budget will change. Where we land at the end of the year will change. But we wanted to provide some scenarios to just kind of see how we could work our way to those ranges.
Mm-hmm.
And a fund balance is really a savings account for those programs that the revenues and the expenses are kind of a moving target, and so it just gives us some flexibility and allows us, the years that we're short on revenues over expenses, it's what we use to make up that gap. So, and that was the Finance and Facility Committee.
Would you like to make the motion?
Sure.
Okay.
I will make the motion to approve a plan for future community fund balance levies.
Is there a second? Thank you. So everybody should remember that we are approving a plan, and that we will actually set the levy in October. Okay. Any questions or comments on this? Thank you for your careful work, planning to help guide us. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion is carried. All right. Also on December 8th, the Personnel Committee met. We had a short agenda, but we had good discussion. So first of all, we heard an update from the Calendar Committee, which would be about the special dates for the next year, 26, 27. Just to make sure everybody remembers that we rely on a committee led by Nate to establish what this calendar is going to look like. People who are using it need to be the ones to make that decision. And then we also went into closed session to discuss our bargaining goals for 26, 27. Do you have anything else to add? All right, so we had no action, even though we had a lot of discussion. Now, on letter F, one of the things that we need to do is get prepared to go to the WASB Delegate Assembly. Allison is going to be our representative this year.
Filling in for Lindsay.
Yes, yes, thank you very much for doing that. We have two choices, and the first thing is that we could specifically direct Allison to vote on issue by issue by issue. The challenge with that is there could be some adjustments that are made on the floor of the delegate assembly and we wouldn't want to lock you in to having to do exactly what we've said if there's a reasonable adjustment to make. So the other option is that we empower Allison to vote in the best interest of the school district on these issues. That's my recommendation. That's what we have done before. That's what Dave is recommending. But we also do want to make sure that Allison is prepared with the issues. And so you have the resolutions in your packet. We have plenty of time for you to be able to review them and then to say, I think that we should have conversation about this so that Allison is clear about a specific issue. We can choose to do that. Today, Dave is going to give us some background on the decoupling issue, which is a really interesting one here.
Yeah.
Because we have resolutions, one for and one against.
Yes.
So, I think that we should take a motion and have a second, and then we'll turn to Dave. So is there a motion that actually, I will make that motion. That the school board we direct our delegate to vote in the best interest of the school district of River Falls at the delegate assembly. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Monica. All right. Now, before we vote, can you lead us through the conversation about decoupling?
Yep.
It's complicated, so we're going to just listen to everything he has to say, and then we'll
Still
ask
not get
questions.
it, and then ask.
Yeah, well, but let him get through the whole thing, and then we'll talk.
It's
All right.
number 10 on the list that
Yes.
you got.
Yes. Yeah.
One
10
thing,
and 11.
one thing I wanted to mention too is these are resolutions that are created by the Wisconsin School Board Association based on recommendations from their policy and resolution committee. These may impact how WASB advocates, but it doesn't change laws or statutes just merely by this discussion. It's a policy setting agenda, and I just wanted to make that clear. And the action tonight gives Allison the authority to cast a vote on the district's behalf for how we land on those policies or those resolutions. So that's the big piece too. As Stacy mentioned, feel free to read through those resolutions carefully. If you feel that it gets necessary for the district to have a conversation if we should or shouldn't be in favor of any other of the resolutions besides 10 and 11, which I'm going to spend the most time on, just reach out to Stacy or me, and then we will just have that as an agenda item for January because that will be prior to when we actually go to the state convention. Okay, so the most unique element of this year's resolution pertains to resolution 10 and 11. All right, so this year the delegate assembly is in the situation where they have two conflicting proposed resolutions on the exact same topic. So resolution 10 calls for WASB to support the policy of decoupling. I'll talk about what that is in a second. And resolution 11 calls for WASB to oppose the policy of decoupling, or in other words, resolution 11 is basically saying we support the current law. All right, so you might be wondering, how can you do that? How can you have two opposing stances on the same issues? What if both resolutions were passed? That seems crazy. And it is not going to happen because according to Robert's Rules of Order, a main motion cannot be brought up again during the same meeting if it is in direct conflict with a motion that has already been adopted. So if resolution 10 is approved by the delegates, then 11 is rendered moot. We can all go home a little bit earlier. Okay, so now what could happen is 10 doesn't pass and then they consider 11 and 11 also doesn't pass. And if that happens, what that means is that WASB just doesn't have a position on coupling or decoupling at all. Okay, so that's the Robert's Rules of Order of how they arrived at having two policies that are exact opposite of one another.
Indeed, to this point, WASB has not had a position on this.
That's how I understand it.
Yeah.
Yep. So, okay, background context. So, decoupling in this realm is talking about how we fund parental choice and independent charter programs. Okay, so parental choice, sometimes called voucher programs, are private schools that get public funds. Okay, so Wisconsin has a bunch of different voucher programs. We have the Milwaukee Parental Choice Program. We have the Racine Parental Choice Program, statewide Wisconsin Parental Choice Program, and the Special Needs Scholarship Program. So collectively, those four programs have been implemented over time, and their funding mechanisms are a little bit different. We also have independent charter schools that are funded. That's not like our charter schools, which are authorized by a school district. Lots of school districts authorize their own charter schools, and we're not talking about those. We're talking about independent charters. And independent charters that were formed prior to 2015 are called legacy independent charters, and anything after 2015 are called new. Okay? That will come into context here as we talk about it. So, how are the programs funded? The Milwaukee Parental Choice Program, which is the oldest of the voucher programs, and the Legacy Independent Charters are state funded. In other words, they're uncoupled from the way that public schools are funded, the aids that come to public schools.
They are right now.
That's correct, right. And that this is not really speaking to those programs. This resolution is speaking to the other programs, okay? So there's no connection between public school state aid and those programs. There's a separate line item in the state budget that identifies those, okay? Now, the other ones, Racine statewide program, special needs program, and new independent charters are funded via state aid reductions to public school districts. And so Lynette has taken time to share with you the last couple of years within our revenue limit, how much of our state aid has been cut because of people living within our school district who participate in one of those programs, and that's impact on our overall aid. So those programs, the ones I just described, are coupled, okay? They're coupled with our state aid. So if a student participates in one of these programs from our school district, our aid goes down, okay? And it goes to that other program, okay? So that's what being coupled means, all right? So what does decoupling propose? Well, decoupling proposes that all choice programs and independent charter payments would be exclusively state funded, okay? It would be its own line item within the budget, their budget, okay? And that is different than when they're coupled, which the way they're funded is through a reduction to the school district's state aid. Does anybody have any questions on that? All right. So how should we land? How do we feel about it? Okay. Well, I'm going to give some information about each of them, and then we can have some discussion. So here's some pros and cons when we consider them. If you look at Resolution 10, which is the one that says decouple them, have it all be its own line item in the budget. So I think my interpretation is when they say that, they're implying that the state wouldn't decrease the state aid that they are applying to public schools. Decouple and put more money or cut the voucher programs. Okay, so if that's the case, if decoupling implies that the state wouldn't decrease the state aid, but instead just distribute it as though if we were getting this amount of money, we would get all of it, then I could see decoupling as a good thing. Great. That would essentially result in more money coming to River Falls School District, the exact money that is identified as our state aid. And we would be in favor of that, okay? One thing that decoupling doesn't do is if we voted in favor of decoupling is it doesn't help us understand how much aid is going or siphoned from supporting public schools into this other program, because there isn't a direct line of sight to them, okay? And it would be a separate line item which would require approval that's different than approval for ours. So there could be a different application of aid to these different programs because it's a whole separate decision that they're making. So decoupling has its pros and its cons. Same thing goes for keeping the status quo. This is David Bell's opinion, keeping the status quo takes a more pragmatic look at the issue. That thought is, it might not be realistic to assume that decoupling means all state aid is going to stay with public schools. And at least with the current process, there is clarity for the taxpayers to know how much their local levy supports private voucher programs, because when our aid is decreased, the way that we are allowed to make that up is by increasing or capturing that money back through the local tax levy. So there's a communication component to that that some might feel valuable, feel as being valuable. So that is kind of why there's two thought processes around coupling and decoupling. What we can do is we can have some conversation about it now, or we can consider it and have deeper conversation next month. Lynette, Nate, anybody else have anything to add? Lynette?
Yeah. Yes. So just to build on your comment about the transparency, we already have a lack of, there is a lack of transparency with the voucher program. So the little bit of transparency we do have would be lost if we decoupled.
But wouldn't the line item in the state budget be pretty clear, transparency? Because it would be, here's money going.
Do you believe that it would be transparent?
Well, where else would it be? I mean, it would have to be a line item in the budget, the state budget. They're not just gonna turn money over.
Yeah. So total dollar amount, yes.
Yeah.
Where
Right.
those students are.
Right. Wouldn't know.
Which programs?
Have
how many
which.
Like how it would be impacting our River Falls taxpayers would be lost in that?
I can't say that for sure.
Yeah.
But that's what your concern is?
Yes. That there would actually be less transparency than we currently have.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about, I mean, I don't know everything about this, but my understanding is that the whole voucher thing went up to the state Supreme Court, and they didn't feel like they had a strong argument, and basically the money going to the voucher schools is being funneled through the public school system, which kind of sort of keeps it constitutional, because it is going to a public school system and then being sent, whereas if it was decoupled, that money would be a separate line item, then it would be much more clearly unconstitutional and or not in keeping with state statutes. And so what's the fastest way to get to the endpoint of voucher schools? Vouchers are not good for public education. They're not in the long run.
Right.
They haven't been. And it's gonna get worse when the caps come off. The caps come off and they can go, now it's at 10%, right? 10% of your students. They're gonna take the caps off, and then it can be as many students as whatever, then what? Then what? So if you think of, I like what you're saying of, it's nice to know how much money's coming, but your average Joe Blow taxpayer isn't going to understand this, and we haven't seen school districts or communities want to put a line item in, and I don't, where does the responsibility for that exist? Like, can we do that?
Right.
Or does the county have to make that decision?
There's been some conversations around certain school districts advocating to their municipalities to put it out there.
Municipality would have to.
Yes.
Correct.
So I just got my tax statement, and I noticed there's like 3 lines on there for the schools.
That's the law. Right. So they don't, we didn't have to go to the municipalities to ask them to do that. They knew they just had to do that because it was the
But we
law.
could go to the municipality and say, you know what, we would like to list this amount of money.
Potentially, yes. Districts that have high participation.
Yeah, and what's ours, 30, 40,000 right now?
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Just over 40,000.
Oh, so it's 4 kids are going to voucher schools.
Correct.
And we would lose that total visibility of it would just be a big number at the state level, it would be River Falls has lost.
Right.
Yeah,
You know,
I just don't know what kind of
Yeah.
information we'd be given.
the coupling versus decoupling is an interesting conversation to have.
Right.
In my opinion, it's the broader context of how much is the state going to prioritize supporting public education versus moving towards greater support, increased support of the host of voucher programs. And that broader conversation to me is much more interesting than if it's coupled or uncoupled.
Right.
And so, but that's not a resolution, this is the resolution, so I want to prepare you
It'd be
for what
really
they're talking
interesting
about.
to hear what arguments come up on the floor.
It could very well be that if there's another step in changing this, it might not be either of these or a combination of these or
Right.
whatever. I think there's probably more than just two choices here. And of course, one of the choices is they don't change anything, period.
They don't have a position.
Right. And the fact that there's two competing resolutions here means that
There's gonna be a lot of dialogue.
well, there's gonna be, that's a good way of saying it, because we're not of one mind yet as to how we should instruct our lobbyists. And maybe there's something different too in this.
Yeah, and realistically, WASB represents every school district in the state, and in some issues, it's pretty complex to say, hey, we, United 421 Proud, are in agreement on this. I mean, there's just different viewpoints on it, so.
Well, are there school districts, of the 421 school districts, who support vouchers, that think, this is great?
I meant coupling or uncoupling. I didn't-
Right,
which is
Oh, no, but I just mean if you backed it up to,
I don't have
are
that.
there school
I wouldn't
districts that
suspect
support vouchers? And if 421 school districts in the state of Wisconsin don't think vouchers are a good thing for the future of the state of Wisconsin, then it's, how do we get rid of vouchers, is the question. Decoupling is a little minor mechanism to try to get at, how do we get rid of vouchers? And you get rid of vouchers in one of two ways. Electing different people to the state legislature and the governors, and a supportive governor to get rid of the vouchers, or having them declared unconstitutional. And I think the decoupling is a faster way to get to declaring unconstitutional. But I don't know,
Right.
there's things I
right.
don't know.
No, yeah, and there's lots of different elements to
Yeah,
it.
but it'll be interesting dialogue, and I'm certainly willing to take any direction this group wants to provide.
I would be interested what the viewpoint is. It would be interesting to see,
Yeah.
because these districts are
Agreed.
within half an hour of each other. One's more
Yeah.
suburban and one's is more out in the suburbs. But it'd be
Yeah.
interesting to see and how do they determine who goes first? I mean, how is it where if the one passes, then the second one is null and void and can't be acted on? How do you decide
Well, that
which
would've
one
been-
gets on the
yeah.
agenda first?
The Policy and Resolutions Committee would have put those two on. I mean, I was there at the beginning of the meeting, but I didn't sit through the whole meeting, so I wasn't privy to the conversations on it.
I don't have an answer.
Yeah, they would have decided that. They're the screening group before it gets to the whole delegate assemblies.
Will
I suspect
Wasserman
it
take a
has to do with
position
the
on
fact
that
that
for
one's a
lobbying?
change versus status quo.
Will Wasp take of it. So I don't know. We actually talked about this at the workshop I went to with Baird. And to complicate it, Dave mentioned it's an aid reduction. Yes, but we book it in as an expense. And so for districts that have a very large expense or aid reduction, that counts towards their shared costs. And they get aid on shared costs. So there are going to be districts who, if that's taken off the books as an expense,
That affects their
may
aid.
be promoting.
They're getting
it
more
the way
state
it
aid
is.
because of that.
Correct.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
But the thing with like us being able to make up the loss by taxing more locally, that's not forever. Isn't that kind of a stopgap right now? We're gonna let you for now do that, but down the road, it's not in stone that we're gonna be able to.
Well,
And that's
well-
just shifting to the local taxpayer.
Yes.
I think initially when some of those programs were started, they weren't funded in this way, but they evolved to being funded this way.
Yeah.
So to your point, who knows how they'll continue or not
Who knows?
continue to evolve.
Right?
So,
It's gonna be a complicated one then.
sure, there you go.
Just in general on this, so I think there's this, and also number two on this, if you look at it, it's a couple school districts advocating that we change the DPI report card.
To make it more consistent, which I love that dichotomy, right? Like
To make it more consistent. So that would be worth your read on it. And just so you know, there'll be 2 people from this board in that delegate assembly with votes. Because as a board member, as a WASB board member, I'll be there too.
And you vote?
And can vote. However, Allison represents this board. I will be representing all of Region 4, which makes it that there might be some that I won't take a position on, because there's so many different schools in the area here. But I'll be up there and will be part of the conversation on any of this. But that's one where I gave Mary Beth a heads up tonight that we'll need some.
Yeah.
I'm sure glad Allison's going this year.
I'm going.
Yeah.
I think it's very interesting, but
Yeah, it is.
it's also confusing, so yeah, I don't. So how about, we have a motion that's been moved and seconded that would be to grant Allison the ability to vote in the best district of the school district. If we pass that, then she has that authority. But then also, as you're reading through this, if there's something that you think we really need to bring up, let one of us know. We'll get it on the agenda. We'll talk about it before we go. This does seem like an issue that we're going to need to trust each other on this, because whatever conversation develops on the floor could really influence what you're thinking
Exactly.
would be in our best interest. And it'll be interesting to see if WASBO does provide any more background or any direction on that. If they do, send it. Yeah.
Well, in the
thanks.
position, I mean, like you said earlier, it's, okay, what are lobbyists going to try to get done in Madison, Wisconsin?
Right.
And what's the record? I mean, what's the record? Like, when we vote on these, how successful are we?
Sure. Yeah, I mean,
But there could be some amendments that would be
Right.
made to this that would definitely shape the lobbying agenda.
And generally what
So-
it is if the legislators are discussing this and somebody goes, well, what do the school boards think about this? They'll look at our lobbyists. If our lobbyists have direction from us to take a stand, then they'll express that. If not, we probably won't weigh down.
But I mean, clearly, though, the majority that's running our legislature is not taking their direction from the 421 public school districts.
But they do take
ones that
input from
support
us.
the privatization
Yeah,
of
right.
schools.
They do take input from, and they've got to attune to us, because if there's a lot of resistance to it, especially coming from local elected officials.
Yeah.
Like they are.
Yeah.
They'll sometimes listen, so.
And our voices can be heard more when we are working together as the district. So, all right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion is carried. Okay, everybody. Do we have any proposed items for future board meeting agendas? All right, then we are going to set the upcoming meeting schedule. The Policy Ad Hoc Committee will meet Monday, January 5th at 6 o'clock. Educational Program Committee will meet Monday, January 12th at 6. Finance and Facilities will meet Monday, January 12th at 7 or immediately following Educational Program. Then bringing up the end of the evening will be Personnel Committee at 8 o'clock or immediately following Finance and Facilities. And the next regular board meeting will be Monday, January 19th, 2026 at 6 o'clock here in the district office. And